Ever wondered why you're struggling to clear the abyss? Or why your damage seems to be lacking compared to other streamers that you watch? Well, there's a good reason for this. Multiple reasons, in fact. Your artifacts and talents have a huge impact on your damage output. However, that's only 2/3 of the equation. Elemental reactions are one of the most important aspects of Genshin Impact. They can provide a huge amount of bonus damage over just physical or elemental damage. In this video, we will look at all the reactions, how they can increase your damage or DPS, and how to maximize your team comps for ideal reaction damage. There are 7 elements in the game: Anemo, Cryo, Electro, Geo, Hydro, Pyro, and Dendro. At this time, Dendro is not available on any playable character and has only one reaction with Pyro, but can be reacted with on Dendro Slimes and Dendro Salamangels. These 7 elements can react with one another to cause additional effects on targets, other than just elemental damage. There are 9 reactions in the game: Burning, Crystallize, Swirl, Superconduct, Frozen, Electrocharged, Melt, Overloaded, and Vaporize. And by the end of this video, we'll go from this to this. Swirl occurs when an Anemo attack is triggered on any applied element other than Geo or Dendro. Since Anemo cannot be applied to its targets, it is always the trigger in Swirl reactions. Swirl has the ability to spread the swirled element to other nearby targets in an area of effect. Swirl will do 1 instance of Anemo damage and 1 instance of damage of the reacting element. The damage of the Swirl reaction depends on the triggering character's elemental mastery. What really makes Swirl work is the Viridescent Venerer artifact set. This set has a 2-piece bonus of plus 15% Anemo damage, but more importantly, the 4-piece set bonus of increasing Swirl damage by 60% and decreasing opponent's elemental resistance to the element infused in the Swirl by 40% for 10 seconds. This bonus can be huge for certain team comps. For Swirl teams, any Anemo character will do. Swirl is used more as a support reaction rather than a DPS reaction, especially with characters like Sucrose or Kadehara Kazuha with the Viridescent Venerer set. The strategy for a Swirl team is to have your Anemo character swirl the element that is going to be triggering the other reactions such as Vaporize. For example, we have Zhongling, Xingqiu, and Sucrose in our party. Zhongling is going to be the one to trigger the Vaporize reaction, as Xingqiu can apply Hydro very quickly. We want Sucrose to swirl Pyro to increase the amount of damage Zhongling will do with her Vaporize reaction. Crystallize occurs when Geo is triggered on any applied element other than Anemo. Like Anemo, Geo cannot be applied to targets and will always be the trigger in crystallized reactions. Crystallized reactions drop a crystal shard after reacting with an element. This shard, once picked up, will provide a shield for the active character. This shield's HP scales with the triggering character's elemental mastery and absorbs the same element's damage more effectively. Crystallized teams are pretty easy to build, just like with Swirl. Just bring some Geo characters and you're good to go. Ningguang is great since she is a Catalyst user and all her attacks are Geo attacks. So as long as she attacks an enemy affected by any element, she will create a crystal shard. You can also bring another Geo character to get the Geo resonance, which will increase your damage dealt while protected by a shield. Albedo and Ningguang can provide easy shards, and you can bring any other character to provide reactions for them. For example, bringing Ningguang into a team with any other Geo character to get the Geo resonance, along with 2 other characters of different elements such as Bennett and Xingqiu. Ningguang will be able to create Hydro shards on targets that are wet and Pyro shards on characters that are affected by Pyro. Since there are no playable Dendro characters in the game as of time of recording, there is no way to trigger Burning consistently or apply Dendro to targets. However, Burning can still be triggered on Dendro Slimes, and Dendro Salamangels can apply Dendro to the player and other targets. Burning occurs when Dendro is applied to a target and then Pyro is triggered, or vice versa. Electrocharged occurs when Electro is applied onto an enemy already affected by Hydro, or vice versa. Electrocharge will deal Electro damage over time to both the Electrocharged target and any nearby targets that are wet. Electrocharged targets will have both an Electro and Hydro element applied to them simultaneously, which allows for multiple reactions to be triggered on a target such as Overloaded, Superconduct, and Vaporize, to name a few. Electrocharged or Taser teams are some of the most fun teams in my opinion. They can be really powerful when you use the character's abilities effectively. There are many combinations, but most notably, Beidou, Raiden Shogun, Fischl, and Lisa are used with Xingqiu, Barbara, Ayato, Kokomi, Mona, and Child. Raiden and Xingqiu pair very well together, as well as Beidou and Fischl with Kokomi and Ayato. For example, Raiden's elemental skill can provide easy off-field electro reactions, along with Xingqiu, who can provide off-field hydro application. Fischl and Beidou are also very good for off-field electro reactions, and much more accessible as they are 4-star characters. Superconduct occurs when Electro is applied onto an enemy that is already affected by Cryo, or vice versa. This reaction deals AoE Cryo damage and reduces the physical resistance of all enemies in the AoE by 40% for 12 seconds. This reaction is obviously ideal for physical attackers like Razor and Eula. Superconduct teams are very interesting, as the damage output of the reaction is not very strong, but the effect is very powerful to physical attackers like Razor and Eula. Using Razor and Kaya together can provide easy superconduct reactions for Razor to further increase his physical damage output. Likewise for Eula, bringing Fischl, Beidou, or Lisa can provide the same effect for her incredibly powerful physical attacks. For example, for Superconduct, we generally want to have a decent physical attacker in the team, such as Razor and Eula. Luckily, they both have one of the required elements for Superconduct. Rosaria can also be a great character to bring for Superconduct teams, as her level 70 passive talent gives the team 15% crit rate for 10 seconds when casting her burst. Frozen occurs when Cryo is applied on a target that is already affected by Hydro, or vice versa. This reaction will stun enemies. Frozen has a unique reaction with heavy attacks from claymores, plunging attacks, explosions, or geodamage, called Shatter. The duration targets are frozen for is determined by the lowest amount of time remaining of the two elements applied. Shatter behaves like an elemental reaction but deals bonus physical damage. Frozen or freeze teams can be quite powerful despite the reaction dealing no damage. If your enemies are constantly frozen, they can't fight back, allowing you to eliminate them before they even put up a fight. For example, we can run pretty much any Cryo and Hydro character together for freeze teams. Ganyu works well with Ayato, Chongyun works well with Xingqiu, Kaya works well with Child, etc. Overloaded occurs when Electro is applied onto a target that is already affected by Pyro, or vice versa. This reaction has an AoE explosion that deals Pyro damage, and the damage dealt by the reaction and the AoE have the same value. Smaller targets hit by Overloaded will be launched back by the explosion. Larger targets will be staggered, and much larger and/or bosses will not be launched or staggered at all. Overloaded is maybe not the most powerful reaction in terms of damage, but because of how easy and quickly it is to set up, means you can have more reactions more often and make up for it. For example, an easy team comp for Overloaded would be Zhongling or Yoimiya with Fischl, Beidou, Lisa, Raiden Shogun, Razor, and Yai Miko. You want someone who can very easily apply Electro on enemies and trigger Pyro on them. My favorite team for this would be Yoimiya, Fischl, Beidou, and Bennett. Sometimes I'll swap out Fischl or Beidou for Raiden Shogun. Melt occurs when Cryo is applied to a target already affected by Pyro or vice versa. When Pyro is the triggering element, the reaction will have a 2x damage multiplier. If Cryo is the triggering element, it will have a 1.5x multiplier, and the Pyro status will remain on the target, allowing for a second quick melt reaction. The damage output of Melt and Vaporize can be further increased by the total amount of attack and elemental mastery of the character triggering the reaction. Melt is one of the only reactions that can crit. Melt and Vaporize are the two biggest damage reactions in the game. This is how most players are hitting 100 to 500k damage numbers. The reaction can crit and essentially doubles your damage. Combining Melt with the Pyro Swirl can further increase Melt's damage output. You want to make sure that you are melting with a Pyro character to get the 2x bonus. Reverse Melt can work, however, you'll want someone who can easily and quickly apply Pyro to maximize DPS. Zhongling can drop Goba and use her burst, and Ayako or Ganyu can quickly melt. Melt team comps are pretty easy to put together, but require a bit of setup in terms of which element is supposed to be reacting. For Melt, you want your Pyro character to be triggering the reaction with a 2x bonus, otherwise if the Cryo character triggers the reaction, you will only receive 1.5x bonus damage. For example, you're going to want trigger characters like Diluc, Hu Tao, Klee, and Yanfei for Pyro, with Cryo enablers like Chongyun, Diona, Kaya, Ayaka, Chi-Chi, and Rosaria. If you are going for reverse Melt, then your trigger characters Aloy, Ganyu, Ayaka, Shunhei will need good Pyro enablers like Bennett, Toma, Zhongling, Yanfei, and Yoimiya. Vaporize occurs when Hydra is applied to a target already affected by Pyro, or vice versa. However, if the reaction occurs the other way around, it will have a lower multiplier. When Hydra is the triggering element, the reaction will have 2x damage multiplier. If Pyro Pyro is the triggering element, it will have a 1.5 times multiplier. Vaporize is the only other reaction next to Melt that can crit. We'll want to also bring in a Nemo character with a 4-piece Viridis and Veneris set to swirl Hydro for maximum damage, preferably Kazuha or Sucrose, since they can increase party elemental mastery for even more Vaporize damage. Vaporize is essentially the same as Melt, although Hydro is now the preferred triggering element. For example, you're going to want the same Pyro enablers to provide the Pyro to your Hydro trigger characters, like Child, Mona, and Xingqiu. All the Hydro characters work well as reverse Vaporize enablers, especially Xingqiu and Child. You'll want the same Pyro trigger characters listed earlier for them. Advanced teams don't limit themselves to one reaction. They combine multiple characters of different elements to combine various reactions for as much DPS as possible. One of my favorite teams for this is the Raiden, Zhongling, Xingqiu, and Bennett team. This team makes use of Vaporize, Overloaded, and Electrocharged. The idea is that Bennett buffs the entire team with his elemental burst. Then we switch to Xingqiu and activate his burst. Then we switch to Zhongling and activate her burst. And finally, we switch to Raiden to activate her burst. Then we stay on Raiden and use her burst normal attacks to quickly apply Electro, so we can get a combination of Electrocharge and Overloaded as well as Vaporize, all being buffed by Bennett. Raiden's burst will also provide energy for everyone's burst so that DPS downtime is minimal. We can also easily swap out Raiden for someone like Sucrose or Kazuha, who can also buff elemental damage with Swirl. The only difference in this case would be swirling Pyro before you activate Xingqiu's and Zhongling's burst. An advanced crystallized team is pretty straightforward. Just bring 2 Geo characters to get the Geo resonance and you're good to go. However, picking the right Geo characters can be difficult in this case. Ningguang and Albedo can easily create the crystal shards. However, Zhongli can provide you with an even stronger shield and debuffs targets elemental and physical resistances. Yunjin can also buff normal attacks. A good team in this case would be Zhongli, Yunjin, Yoimiya, and Bennett, or Zhongli, Albedo, Zhongling, and Xingqiu. An Electrocharge, Freeze, and Superconduct team, or a Super Electro Freeze team, can be pretty effective. I generally don't like Superconduct, but Freeze and Electrocharge are some of my favorite teams to run. We can take Eula as our main attacker with Xingqiu or Ayato, and Lisa, Beidou, Raiden, or Fischl as our Electro support. Our last character will be a flex character, someone that we can run in any position. In this team, we are looking to freeze our targets, then react Superconduct so that Eula can do as much damage as possible. Utilizing these reactions effectively can significantly increase the damage of Vaporize and Melt. With Child's Burst as the trigger, Zhongling for Pyro Resonance, Bennett Burst to buff Child's damage, and Sucrose to swirl Hydro to increase Hydro damage, this team can improve my Child's Burst damage from around 40k to around 150k. Likewise, for Melt, my Ganyu's charge attacks can go from 35k to 90k charge attacks. Hopefully this has helped you to understand more about how teams are made and how to build teams around reactions. I hope you learned something from this video about reactions in Genshin Impact. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, please leave a like or comment what your favorite reaction or team comp is. Subscribe below for more videos like this and check out my Twitch where I stream and help you with any Genshin related questions. Thanks for watching.